Everyone, and welcome to 1.4. So make sure you got 1.4 notes in front of you. We're working with complex numbers. That's where they got the I in, right? Remember the imaginary number? So let's have some fun and see how you do with this. Okay, we're going to add and subtract. We're going to multiply complex numbers. We're going to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and do a few operations with square roots. Now, to go through, the first thing we want to remind you is what an imaginary number is. So an imaginary number is when you have the square root of a -1. Because remember before where I said, hey, that's not possible? Well, that's kind of a lie. The square root of -1, by definition, is I. So if you see I in there, that means there's a square root of -1 in the number. When you square it, I squared, it equals -1. Because watch, you take the square root of -1 and I square that, those cancel and you get -1. So an I squared is actually a real number. It's no longer imaginary. Okay, they're always in the form of A plus B. A is the real part and B is the imaginary part. So we always write it that way too. We don't like the I first. We want the real part first. So the first part is adding and subtracting. So when you add and subtract, you add the real part and then you add the imaginary. It's like doing two pieces. I'll do the first one and you do the second. So when we look here, we take 5 is real and 7 is real. So you add those two together and you got 12. That's the first section. Now, the second part is you do the imaginary part. It's kind of like an X and a Y. So I have a -2i and a positive 11i. So I put those together. So -2 plus 11 is 9. So then you get plus 9i. And that's finished. All right, do yours. Pause and try. Okay, yours was a little bit different because it had this negative in here. And there's no real part of the 13i, it's just imaginary, which is fine. So we got 13i, and we have -7 minus 9i, because you distributed that negative, right? Okay, now to combine, well, this is the real part, and he always goes first, and he's by himself, so we just write him down. Now next we have the imaginary, so you have a 13i minus a 9i, which gives you a plus 4i. And make sure you write it with a real part first. Well done. Now we're going to multiply them, and you do it just like you do anything else. It's just distribution. So you can multiply a real by an imaginary. It's got to multiply the numbers in front, or the coefficients. So let's take 5 times 3, which is 15. So you did the first part. Now we take 5 times 4, I. So that's a 20i. Now we're doing the second part. So we're going to take the -2i. Don't forget the negative. Times the 3, giving us a -6i. Now the next part is a little tricky. So -2i times a positive 4i. Well, that's a -8i squared. But remember, I squared is really -1. So you're taking -8 times -1, so this really just changes this guy's sign in front. So let's write down what we truly have here. So the 15 is going to come down. Combine these two because they're both i's. So that's plus 14i. And this, instead of -8, is really plus 8. Combine your real terms. You could have done this in one step up here if you wanted. So now we have 23 plus 14i. And that's your final answer. Okay, the next part, I should have given you one to try. Let's go here. Okay, a conjugate. Now we've done these with square roots before. It might have been a while ago though. So the conjugate of an imaginary number is the same thing. If it's minus here, it's plus here. If this is plus, then this guy is minus. You just change that inside sign. So to do this, we're doing that to get rid of the imaginaries, and we're going to do that when we clear this, like down here in this denominator. Just like square roots, we don't like imaginary numbers in the denominator. So we take 2 minus 5 times 2 plus 3i. So let's see what happens. You get the 4. You get the positive 6i, the minus 6i, so right there, they're canceling on us. Now I've got a minus 9i squared, but remember I squared is -1, so these guys are gone. Then the negative 9, or minus 9, becomes plus 9. So then you have 4 plus 9, which is 13. All right, let's try this guy together down here. So I got 2 plus 3i. So the first thing I have to do is multiply this by his conjugate, which is 2 minus 3i. But whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. And the numerator is not going to be as pretty as the denominator, but that's all right. So I know this middle term down here is going to go away, so I don't have to do all that work. I can take the 2 times the 2, which is the 4, and the 3i times the negative 3i, which is minus 9i squared, but that I squared is going to cancel and change this sign to a positive. So I know my denominator is 13. So we got the bottom part done. So now let's do the top. Here, let's just draw this down here, put the 13. Now let's work on that numerator. There's no shortcuts here, so you have to do it all. So 4 times 2, so there's an 8. Multiply through here, minus 12i. Multiply your 7i through, so now you got a plus 14i, and then a minus 21i squared. Don't forget that I squared right here, that guy right there. All right, so now let's combine these things. Well, I know the I squared is going to make that a plus 21. And this is a real number, and this is a real number. So now I've got 29 here. Minus 12i plus 14i is going to be a plus 2i all over 13. Now I'm going to check to see if anything can reduce. And there's nothing that goes into 29, 2, and 13. So that is done. Okay, let's look here. When you have a square root of a negative, I don't care what the number is, the negative here comes out as an I, and this only works in square roots and fourth roots. Cube root, that negative is fine, so don't forget that. So I'm going to do the square root of negative 63, and then you're going to do the next two. Well, I know 63 is negative 1 times 63, and I know 63 is 9 times 7. Okay, if you don't recognize that and you need to bring out these 2 3s, that's fine. Okay, the square root of negative 1 is I, so I write him first. So like if I was doing this, I put an I. And I would do my square root to see what goes where. Now, I have 2 3s, so that's going to come out as a 3, because I have 1, right? I need 2 to make a pair. The 7 doesn't have anything, so he stays inside, and that's my answer. Okay, pause and try yours. So here you should have said, hey, I got the square root of a negative 1 times 52, and I don't know what goes into 52. Kind of pretending here. So there's a 2 and a 26. That's not very helpful. Okay, let's try something else. 2 and 30. Ooh, that's helpful. I've got these right here, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So now I can take the I out from here. So I got him. The 2 comes out. He's here, but this 13 does not, so he goes inside of my radical. All right, they follow the same rules as before. They have to be identical in order to add them. So let's see how you did on this one. And if you didn't do it yet, pause it and try it. So I know it's a negative 1 times 27. 27 is 3 times 9, and I know the square root of 9 is 3. So now I got 3i square root of 3 right here. Okay, let's try this guy. Negative 148. Well, I see a 4, so let's take that out. 4 and 12. And 12 is 4 and 3. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. Here, let's write this to help you out. So I got a 2 here and a 2 here. So 2 times 2 is 4. So I know this is 4. And I know this is I from the negative 1. This 3 doesn't go anywhere, so there's a square root of 3. So far, I'm going to rewrite it over here. We have 3i square roots of 3 plus 4i square roots of 3. They are both imaginary. They're both square roots of 3. So since that holds, I can add these. We can take the 3 and add it to the 4 and say, I have 7i square roots of 3. Okay, how did you do on this last one? It's a little bit mean, not terrible. I did this one to make sure you took this I out first. All right, so you should have negative 2 minus I square roots of 3 squared. So I'm just going to write it twice here to do it the long way. If you knew how to do it the shortcut, please do so. So now let's distribute. Negative 2 times negative 2, that's my positive 4. Negative 2 times I squared roots of 3, well, that's a positive 2 I square roots of 3. Okay, now let's do the other one. So we got negative I square roots of 3 times negative 2. Well, that's going to be a plus 2I square roots of 3. See how they doubled here? That's what we wanted. And what did you get here? So this should be plus I times I is I squared. And the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. I hope you did that well. Well, now I know I squared is really negative 1. So that changes this from a positive to a negative. Now let's combine like terms. I have a negative 3 here, a positive 4 here, so that's 1. 2I and 2I is plus 4I square roots of 3. Did you do well? All right, it is homework time. Have fun. Remember to post your questions on the discussion board and help each other out. Have a great day.